Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Olga Bashbush. I'm a program officer here at the Washington Foreign Press Center. Welcome this morning. I do just want to put out some ground rules. This, of course, is an on-the-record, on-camera briefing. We are live streaming currently. After this briefing, we will provide everybody with a video link as well as a transcript via email, and we will upload it to our website, which is fpc.state.gov, and we will be amplifying this via Facebook and Twitter. It is my great honor to introduce Deputy Undersecretary Martha Newton from the Department of Labor to talk about child labor, child trafficking, and their new mobile applications. This is a very important topic. I do encourage you to please ask questions. We have a small group, so this is great. Please turn off your cell phones at the moment. Ms. Newton will be making some remarks, and then we will be taking questions. So thank you very much again for attending. And now I introduce Ms. Martha Newton.
Good morning. How's everybody this morning? And thank you, Olga, so much for that kind introduction. I'm delighted to be here with you all today. I'm just back from New York City, where last evening the International Labor Organization and its partners announced that there are still over 152 million child laborers and 25 million forced laborers worldwide. Now, the good news is that's a 38% reduction since 2000, since the data began being collected. And we're really proud that the United States, and particularly the United States Department of Labor, has played a significant role in helping to bring about this decline. So while these figures show that clearly progress has been made, we're here today to talk about what we can continue to do to make sure that modern slavery and forced labor continues not to destroy childhoods and strip adulthoods of their dignity. At the U.S. Department of Labor, under the leadership of Secretary Alex Acosta, I'm fortunate enough to lead the Bureau of International Labor Affairs, or ILAB, as we like to call it. ILAB has worked for over 20 years in support of global efforts to end child labor, forced labor, and modern slavery. And we've piloted over 90, we've worked and piloted in over 90 countries to help eliminate these abuses. But our experience demonstrates that on the issues of child labor, forced labor, and modern slavery, we need action by many actors and many actors at the table, which is why we work with governments, civil society, and businesses to ensure that everybody does their part. As you all probably likely know, this administration is about jobs, jobs, and more jobs. And at the Department of Labor, we believe that an essential part of job creation is putting the welfare of workers first. As President Trump has stated over the past few days, our priority will always be the security and prosperity of our American citizens. And obviously at the Department of Labor, that means the American worker. But you see, not only are the injustices of child labor and forced labor morally wrong, families in the United States and workers also suffer because of an unfair competitive advantage that has been borne horrifically on the backs of child slaves and forced laborers around the globe. So let me assure you that when it comes to child labor, forced labor, and any form of modern day slavery, we're fully in this fight together with the rest of the global community. But I'm here today because we're excited to announce the release of our 16th annual Worst Forms of Child Labor report and its update, its accompanying Sweat and Toil app. This year's child labor report assesses 135 countries that are beneficiaries of trade assistance, and it offers a snapshot where child labor is found in each country and the advances that governments have made over the past year to combat the issue. 23 countries received an assessment of significant advancement, and the exciting news is that's more than ever before. However, there are still a few governments that are complicit in forced child labor. Despite making some efforts to address child labor, these countries have received an automatic assessment of no advancement due to the egregious nature of the abuse. For example, South Sudan's National Army forcibly recruits and uses children in armed conflict. The report also does more than diagnose the problem. It recommends concrete, country-specific actions that governments can take to tackle these abuses. And there's actually more than 1,700 recommendations in the report. And of these recommendations, 65% or 1,100 of them actually relate to improvements in law and law enforcement. And this indicates how urgently additional progress is needed in ensuring that governments hold those who perpetrate child labor abuses accountable. Laws are important and they're great to have on the books, but they mean nothing if they're not enforced to protect children. In addition, half of the countries assessed do not have adequately staffed labor inspectorates, and at least in 40 countries, labor inspectorates are not authorized to penalize perpetrators when violations are discovered. So while the report shows progress with more advancement by countries than ever before, it also shows that certain countries have a long way to go. This year, iLab is funding more than $47 million in programming to support targeted action against child labor and forced labor around the globe. And that is combined with already $350 million, an additional 70 programs that we also already have in place at the Department of Labor. The programs, the $47 million this year, is going to focus specifically on sectors like coffee, fishing, and forced labor and trafficking in persons for use in forced labor. But we're also excited for something that we're doing specifically targeted to help businesses. Today we're releasing what we're calling the Comply Chain app, which will help companies set up robust social compliance systems to help root out child labor and forced labor in the supply chains. The Comply Chain is an easy app to use, and it's a valuable tool for companies to help their suppliers identify, rectify, and prevent child labor abuses in the goods they produce. So we're really excited. You know, it's when you talk about data, some people tend to glaze over, but we are very excited about how this tool is used to benefit workers and workers around the globe. I hope that you'll personally join us in this effort by raising greater awareness through these issues through your reporting. We all know that regular and accurate reporting on child labor and forced labor helps expose those who engage in abusive labor practices, and it gives a voice to the voiceless. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you all being here today. And I just want to give a thank you to the team at the U.S. Department of Labor and the Office of Child Labor, Forced Labor, and Human Trafficking. We have some of our experts here today who are going to be answering some country-specific questions, and I just commend them for the incredible work they've done on this report. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to open it up to questions. My colleague Sue Emerson has the microphone, so when you ask a question, please state your name and also your outlet, and speak slowly for the transcript. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Simon Ateba from Simon Ateba News Africa. Would you like to comment more on the situation in two countries, Nigeria and Cameroon?
Sure, sure. I'm going to call up my colleague, Marcia Eugenio, the director of the Office of Child Labor, Forced Labor, and Human Trafficking, who can answer your questions in more specificity. And could you say the two countries again, just so we can make sure? Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Good morning, and thank you for that question. You know, I just want to start by saying that Africa is one of the continents that has one of the largest proportion of children engaged in child labor. The ILO, the International Labor Organization, recently released, actually yesterday released, some new global estimates. And about 152 million children are involved in child labor. specifically for Nigeria. And we have, as Deputy Undersecretary Newton mentioned, we have a number of reports and tools that we use. We have the report that we're releasing today on the war to child labor, but we also have a list of goods made with forced or indentured child labor that is produced as part of the Trafficking Victim Protection and Reauthorization Act. On Nigeria specifically, there is sort of good news. Nigeria actually received this year a assessment of moderate advancement for its efforts in eliminating the worst forms of child labor. Some of the steps that Nigeria took included a national plan, social protection plan that provides cash transfers to extremely poor families on the condition that they send their children to school. Now, that is probably one of the most effective ways of addressing child labor, which is like trying to address the needs of the family and engaging them and trying to figure out like the root causes of why the child is working. But Nigeria still has some areas where some additional efforts are needed. Children in Nigeria are still involved in trafficking. There is children working in quarrying, in granite and gravel, commercial sexual exploitation, forced begging, and armed conflict. There's also some issues related to enforcement of the laws and issues related to making information available for programs and for designing actions to address the problem. Regarding Cameroon, similarly, Cameroon also received a assessment of moderate advancement. I should mention that the way that we produce the reports is that we assess countries according to significant advancement, moderate advancement, minimal advancement, or no advancement. And actually receiving a assessment of moderate advancement is very good. It means that the government and the country is taking efforts to address the problem. Nigeria also this year, one of those efforts included an anti-trafficking law, $12 million for food and education and child nutrition program that assisted families in need. They negotiating the repatriation of girls that were actually trafficked to Kuwait and Lebanon. And they also, but they also kind of have some other issues as well. And in Nigeria, where we have identified some concerns related to child labor, includes work in the cocoa sector, as well as in domestic work. Children work in commercial sexual exploitation as well. I'm sorry. I was talking about Cameroon. So both Nigeria and Cameroon received the same assessment. And for Cameroon, that was the last set of comments that I made related to some of the efforts that they took. And, the efforts that I'm discussing here, they're all included in the report. The one thing that I will say about this is that this year more than ever, we've seen countries actually take efforts and increase their level of engagement on this issue. There is a lot of, I've been working in this issue for over 25 years. I've seen the trend, and I've seen the trend toward a lot more engagement by countries in trying to do something about the problem. So I think both of these countries are deserving of, receiving the assessment that they're receiving today. And we look forward to engaging with them in actually reviewing some of the recommended actions that we have in the report. Thank you.
My name is Rafael Salido from Agencia F. Actually, I have two questions. One is related, you were talking about some countries that haven't made any kind of progress or anything, just like South Sudan. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about other countries, just like South Sudan, who won't make any kind of effort, and what can the United States do to work on that. And secondly, I would like for you to explain me a little bit more about the situation in South America, if possible.
Sure. Well, I can tell you, I'll again, like I said, I'll turn it over to our experts for a more deep dive. I can tell you that in the 4 countries that received no advancement were South Sudan, Eritrea, Swaziland, and Uzbekistan. And then as far as South America, we'll talk just Latin America and South America in general. I'll give an example of where we've got some really great technical assistance, and where this program, this report is as a result of the Trade and Development Act of 2000, where it required us to, and countries who are part of trade commitments to the United States under GSP, to make sure that they're addressing the worst forms of child labor. Just last month, when Vice President Pence was in Colombia, we were able to be a part of what the technical assistance looks like for Colombia in $2 million in additional technical assistance. I can have Marcia speak in terms of South America and some of the more details about Brazil, Argentina, other places that we're doing, and also more a deep dive on some of the other countries that we've just mentioned. Marcia.
Thank you for that question. Deputy Undersecretary Newton just actually finished mentioning some of the countries that we have listed as no advancement, and our reports are actually online with a country profile that you can review that has a lot more information and have a lot more details as to why the assessment was done that way.
I was also asking about that issue, what can the government do about it? Sorry. Which I don't know if it will be on the report. I do realize that the name of the countries will be there, but what can the United States do to work on that? Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Actually, that's a great way of introducing why is it important to kind of prove, why are we here? Why is it important to talk about the report and produce the report, rather than just listing countries and saying they're making advancement or they're not making advancement. Just starting with the countries that are not making advancement, we have a very detailed list of the things that we think actions could be taken to address the problems that we're highlighting. So not only do we use the report to shine a light on a problem, we also provide very specific recommendations that we think will be helpful in addressing that project. And the U.S. government has been working on this issue for a very long time. We are willing and able and ready to engage in policy discussions with any country that want to talk to us about this issue and kind of discuss very concrete type of solutions. Excuse me. In a more positive part of this discussion, I want to talk about those that actually made a significant advancement, because I think it is important to highlight those countries and to continue to encourage them to do more. And you mentioned Latin America, and Latin America happens to be one of the regions where most of the countries that made significant advancement are actually in Latin America. And there is a good reason for that. In Latin America, countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, have actually taken the issue of child labor and forced labor to heart. And they are taking concrete actions. They are passing laws. They are enforcing the laws. There's still gaps there that they can work on, but they're still making efforts in that regard. They are taking policy, developing policy documents and action plans, and they're instituting social protection programs that actually help vulnerable families to send their children to school and to get rid of abusive situations. A lot more could be done. No country is perfect, but some of these countries have actually done quite a lot. And Latin America is certainly an example of a region where a lot of efforts have been taken. Something else to say about Latin America is that in November of this year, November 14 and 16, Argentina is going to host the 4th Global Conference on the eradication of child labor. That is a very big commitment for the region, for the country, but also like bringing in other governments from other countries, from other regions of the world into Argentina to have a very extensive and significant and concrete discussion on how to move this issue forward.
Could I do a follow-up on Latin America? Thank you. I'm Luis Alonso with the AP. I would like to ask about the challenges. The report mentions not enough funds in inspectors and social programs. Do you guys see political will, or is the recession that the region is in now the main reason for this? And I also wanted to ask you for a comment on the 2 countries that have minimal advancement that the report hardly mentions, which are Venezuela and Uruguay. Bolivia is discussed a lot, but Venezuela and Uruguay is not mentioned at all. So if you could please, a brief comment. Thank you.
Do you want me to handle it?
Yeah, Venezuela and
Okay, so for Venezuela and Uruguay. Uruguay actually does not have minimal advance. Uruguay has. You say Uruguay?
Minimal advance. I saw in the map. Yes. It's in orange. Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to look at my list here.
Page 14.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Paraguay, who happens to be a significant advancement country. So I was confusing my piece there. So Uruguay did receive a minimal advancement in efforts to eliminate the worst form of child labor. It's interesting because Uruguay had been, in earlier years, they have received higher assessment levels. And this year, they took some efforts, but the way that we produced the report is that in order for a country to receive a significant advancement, the country must take a significant action in legislation, enforcement, policy, coordination, and social programs. And the way that we look at it is if there are no problems in any of those areas, we don't necessarily fault the country for not taking an action, but we expect continual progress to take place. In Uruguay, there were some efforts, but there continues to be a significant problem with child labor, and therefore we felt that the minimal advancement assessment was correct. Now, for Venezuela, I'm trying to look. In Venezuela, this is another country where there are a couple of different things happening. One is difficult to get information about what is actually happening in the country, as we all know. And then the other issue there is because of the situation, there hasn't really been a focus on issues related to child labor and issues related to protecting vulnerable families. There has not been, according to the information that we have. Now, this report is actually produced with information that is publicly available. So we use the information that is available to us in order to conduct the assessment. The information that we have for Venezuela did not indicate that there was actually a lot of efforts that were taking place to address issues related to domestic work, human trafficking, and situations of exploitation in other areas.
On the blue.
Yes, hi. I have specific questions about Azerbaijan and a question on Russia. I didn't see it listed in the report, so I just wanted to know whether it was there
Sure.
and I just missed it.
Well, Russia's not under GSP, so as far as being covered under this report would not be an identified beneficiary that we would have to report on with regards to this report. I'll speak to Azerbaijan, and then if there's any information we can share with Russia, but it's not covered or required underneath this specific report. As far as Azerbaijan, I know that they were given automatic minimal advancement. And the reason why is they instituted a practice that delays advancement on the worst forms of child labor. And they suspended all labor inspections not based on a formal complaint. So that's the date of during the year 2016.
Just as a follow-up, I looked through your previous reports, and for Azerbaijan for 2011, it was minimal, then it went up to moderate in 2012, stayed moderate in 2012, 13, 14, and then went down to minimal in 2015, sure. And in 2016, the notation says minimal but regression in laws. So the regression in laws is that what you just mentioned?
Yes.
Is that, do you have any information on why it went from moderate to?
Sure, I'll defer to Marcia. And you all have kind of, this is my second week as the Deputy Undersecretary International at Labor, even though I was privileged to be with this great team from 2002 to 2006. So for some historical knowledge, we have to tag team here, and I thank you all for being so gracious about it.
And let me take this opportunity to kind of say that after 2 weeks, this is the level of effort and expertise that we get. So we're very, very grateful to our Deputy Undersecretary, not only for her prior commitment to the work of the office, but for her current commitment to this issue and for standing here today and answering questions. So yes, I can talk to you a little bit about it. So the way that we report to help understand why assessment levels may change from year to year, because this is an important question about how the report is produced. So the report actually covers the previous year. So for 2016, what we're looking at is efforts that were made. Actually, for 2017, the report that we're publishing today, we're looking at the efforts that were made in 2016. So we cover the period from January 2016 through December 2016. So every year, what we're looking at is that one period of time. So if a country doesn't make any efforts, then the report will actually reflect that. If the country makes an effort, the report also reflects that during that year. The situation about the minimal advancement, if a country actually institutes a practice or takes a policy that seems to regress, in some ways delays the progress that needs to be made to address the worst forms of child labor, we will take that into account. So that country gets an automatic minimal advancement, even if it's making some efforts.
Specifically, what was just mentioned as a change that took place in 2016, it's some regulation regarding inspections, right, if I understood correctly. But the dive down happened in 2015. So was there another law in 2015?
So the government suspend.
And before I give back the microphone for good, one more thing is, do you track microeconomic or macroeconomic factors that may affect these trends by country?
So in 2016, the government suspended all labor inspections not based on a formal complaint. And they imposed a moratorium on inspections during the reporting period. So that is the primary reason why they are receiving a minimal advancement. In terms of tracking economic, social, political situations that may impact child labor or forced labor in a country, yes, we look at all of those, but we have a very specific criteria that we follow in all countries equally. So we use a standard to be very fair to how we do the assessment. We follow a very specific criteria for doing the assessment. And while there may be some situation in the country, including political unrest or an economic crisis, in some cases we've had natural disaster in a country that has actually led to situations of forced labor or child labor or trafficking. We do take that into account, but our report is very factual. We report on, is there a child labor, worst form of child labor situation, and what is it and where it's taking place, and what efforts are being made during that period of time to address it.
Hi, my name is Sarah Cook. I'm with NHK Japan Broadcasting. I had a couple of questions. So first of all, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about countries that you've seen regressing from previous years, or from last year in particular, where you've seen major backsliding and maybe even major improvements as well. I was also wondering about the countries that had no assessment, what the reason for that is, if it's just a lack of information or if there's a particular reason for that.
Sure.
Yeah, and one last thing, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then also if you could talk a little bit more about the app as well.
Sure. Well, let me talk a little bit about the app first, and then we can go back and I'll have Marcia go into the countries. And I promise you the next time I stand in front of you, I'll be able to nail all 152. But it's been great. Like I said, as my second week here, the incredible work that this team does. And I think just over the period, like I said, 16 years, I was at iLab from 2002 to 2006. And to say, part of me is there's a lot of work to be done, but we also should celebrate that there is a reduction. It's going down. Like I said, 38% reduction in child labor and forced labor. So for us, it's important because it's showing that our investment has worked. But about the Comply Chain app, and we really hope that you all can be voices for this. It is a specific application that was developed. We had, if you're not familiar with our Sweat and Toil app, that you're able to look at the conditions of countries on child labor and forced labor and get more specific information. But as we all know, forced labor and child labor is a result of, often egregious abuses in a business supply chain. So the application is developed. It has 8 different steps that you take that takes you through, and it kind of has some different tracks. So first of all, for businesses that may have no social compliance system at all, it will take them through. And and the reality is, folks who just don't know where to start. I mean, one of this things the report does is shine a light on abuses in countries that helps us. We work very closely with business. It's business, it's unions, it's government. We all have to work together, and NGOs to help end this. But with the application, it takes you through all the different steps. Compliance, remediation, through the different steps. And then for businesses that have a more robust social compliance system, it has some really tips from some of the top, experts in the field, organizations like Verite and other folks that have helped us to be able to give some best practices that can be shared. So people who think, we have one in place, we've checked that box. But we always want to make sure that we can help provide the best tools for business as they're addressing it. Because as we know, business, I always say that business does best when they want to do well, but it's the best model when you do good and do well. And I think obviously as U.S. consumers and the choices that we make, and we like that one of the things about the report and our tools is it helps also U.S. consumers about making choices of things we want to purchase. It gives you great background information. So thank you all in advance for just helping to be a voice and share about the importance of Comply Chain and the Sweat and Toil app, because it is a great when they used to do this report when I was here many years ago, it was long before the internet. It was a significant tomb that was very important, but it was hard to be shared and much less carried. And so I'm excited now that we can really put all this information at everybody's fingertips. And then I'll turn it over. Sorry, you have one more question? Okay, but we on the backside, the second part of your question. Sorry, if you can just repeat it for Marcia. Yes, sure.
Oh, thank you. So I was just wondering about countries where you've seen either some backsliding in the past year or a couple of years, as well as specific countries where you've seen a lot of progress. And then also the no assessment countries, why that is.
Can you start? Yeah. I'm giving Marcia a workout today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I need it. I'm glad and I'm doing this without coffee, which is quite a challenge. So let's start with the countries that are backsliding. So we only have 2 countries this year that actually are new to the automatic minimal advancement countries, because efforts were made, but there was regression in practice or delay advancement, and they are Iraq and Mauritania. So for Iraq, it is because they facilitated the recruitment of child soldiers, and that is one of the issues that receives an automatic minimal advancement. Then the other one is Mauritania. And Mauritania is because of the compulsory labor, so basically forced labor in agriculture and in some public areas. Actually, Mauritania in Mauritania, the issue is an issue of forced labor and slavery. The country did take some efforts, but those efforts did not reach the level of moderate advancement. And when a country, as in the government, is involved in forced labor, it is actually an automatic minimal advancement or no advancement, depending on the situation. I think you asked another question related to the no. Why are there countries in there that says no reporting or no nothing like that? So the reason is because there are some countries in there where we actually the population of those countries are not large enough for us to actually do reporting. So I know that it seems a little bit confusing that you will have some territories that receive GSP benefits and, there may be 1,000 people. But for those countries, we actually don't do any reporting for them. In the report itself, in that magazine style that you got, there is actually an explanation for the criteria that we use and the methodology that we use in the report that is very useful in trying to kind of understand the different assessment levels. And we're always happy to kind of talk to you and explain it and kind of get you to understand a little bit more. But I really encourage everyone to really take a look at the report itself and read the assessments, because we don't want the tagline to be this country receive a minimal assessment or this country receive a significant advancement. We want the tagline to be, it's like, we're making progress. There is still a lot more work to be done. And there are countries that need to do even more work to actually remove children from the worst forms of child labor or adults from exploitation as in forced labor. Thank you.
One more? Yep.
Hi, this is Saskia Fröhlich from the German Press Agency. I have a question on a country that is not covered by the report as well, but I figured maybe you have information about it. Can you comment anything about the forest workers in North Korea or sent from North Korea to other countries?
Sure. Well, obviously this is a challenging situation, and I think as far as I'd be happy to talk to you more, on background about that specifically after this session. Marcia, as far as North Korea and on prison or forced laborers going perhaps across to other borders and workers, obviously it's not addressed in the report. No. Yeah, but we'd be happy to give you more information or background on that. And Marcia, if you have any comments.
Yeah, so North Korea is not really addressed in the report, so it wouldn't be covered. We do have another report, which is the list of goods produced with child labor or forced labor in violation of international standards. So you could actually look at that one. And that report actually have sources of information that we've used to include information that could be useful for you if you're interested in more of the situation of forced labor from North Korea and other workers going into other countries. We will, however, if there are workers from North Korea in situations of exploitation, abuse, child labor, forced labor in that country, we will report on that country itself if it is covered in our report and say, you know, it could, for example, say children from this country are being abused in this situation. But it will reference North Korea, but not necessarily as reporting on North Korea in the report. I did want to correct the record on Mauritania because, and I want to be very specific on why we did the assessment that we did because it's somewhat of a technical issue. So in Mauritania, they received a minimal advancement because it continued to implement a policy that require proof of marriage and biological parent citizenship in order to get a birth certificate. As a result, children born out of wedlock and many other children of ethnic minorities in Mauritania have been prevented from being registered at birth. So, and the implication of this is that in many countries, if a child doesn't have a birth certificate, that child does not have access to education, and in many cases, they don't have access to social protection programs. And as I mentioned earlier, without education, without social protection programs, without enforcement of laws, it is very difficult to address situations of exploitation, including child labor and forced labor. Thank you.
And then my only comment with regards to when you're talking more about goods is, you know, one of iLab's banner reports is also authorized under the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, the TVPRA, where we're required to report on products made with forced and child labor, and that's every 2 years. So you're going to be able to look forward to getting that report in 2018, and we'll be updating the list of goods and services at that time. And thank you all so much today and being here. And like I said, we're always happy. Please reach out to DOL if you need any more additional information on background. To other folks that are viewing around the world today, we thank you so much, and all the posts around the world that do such a tremendous job of helping the U.S. government do this, not only do this work, but do this work exceptionally well. So thank you again, and thank you to the Foreign Press Center for having us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the Deputy Undersecretary for her remarks and for answering your questions. If you have further questions, please send it to fpcowner@state.gov. I will make sure that you get a response. The transcript and the video will be up shortly, and thank you again for joining us.